But I've been working with open educational resources for quite some time. I have sort of two signature projects, I guess you could say, that I've done with OER. The first one is called the Pathways Project, and that one I'm co-director on with my colleague Kelly Rispe, who she's a professor of Spanish at Boise State. But the Pathways Project is an openly licensed collection of ancillary material. So you're going to hear a lot about ancillary today, but that means that it's standalone. When you hear ancillary, it means that you can use that with a textbook or with a curriculum, or you can use it all by itself and kind of mash it up and take what you want. So we have over 900 openly licensed activities in all different languages, including English. And I think a lot of the activities on there you might be able to adapt for teaching with English. The instructions are all in English, so you would just have to kind of mix up some of the content that is in other languages. But we have some in English. And then the other project that I worked on was a 4-semester openly licensed curriculum with Sharon, which is called Francais Inclusive. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. So I'll save a description of that for you. But that Francais Inclusive has a textbook, but it also has lots of ancillary materials. So we have anything from cultural reflections to assessments to slide decks that you can use in class. So those might be of interest to you as well. And let's see, I've done lots of different stuff at the local, state, and national level with OER, but I'm really passionate about helping other people get their great ideas into the world. I think that's the power of open. For so long, things were just publisher heavy, and that meant that a lot of great voices and perspectives weren't shared. And so that's something that really excites me about OER, is that we can put more voices out into the world. We can hear from great people, and that includes students too, right? So that includes students who are doing their masters in TESOL can share their activities, but even students who are undergraduate students or students enrolled in our classes, they can also create materials for others to benefit from. And I just feel like the more we share and the more we do together, the more that we can get done. There's a lot of power in teamwork. It's not a competition, right? We want everyone, we have a goal for our students to learn, and together we can accomplish that. So a little bit about me. All right, and my goal for you today is we're going to talk a little bit about what are OER. So if you're brand new to OER, no worries. I'm going to get you comfortable with what that is and some of the benefits. I always say you come to OER for the cost savings. You've probably heard a lot about cost savings with OER, but I hope you'll come for the cost savings, but stay for the pedagogy, because there's so much good stuff, so many reasons for you to be using it besides just the cost savings. I'm going to give you some examples of ancillary materials tailored for TESOL, and then I'm going to show you where to find these, a little bit of how we can use them if we have time, and then certainly try to save some time for questions. I was telling Soleil and Natasha before we got started that I really very much feel like this is like if you were to think of a game map or a path. Hopefully this is just one dot on the path for you. This isn't going to be everything you need to know about OER, but I told them I'm very much happy to come back and do another workshop. And I'm always happy if you want, I'll share my email with you. But if you have questions or if you want to chat about things, this is the thing that I think I'm like, OER is the thing I'm really most passionate about right now. And I love to help other people get into it. So with that, here are my goals for you. I hope that you'll be able to explain the benefits of OER to a student or a colleague. Talk about the different types of OER with a student or a colleague. And I'm going to give you, actually, I don't have quite 6 types for you today because I customized this a little bit, but I'm going to give you about 5 different ones that you can pick from. And then I want you to be able to find and recall at least one site for finding material. So that's kind of my mentality too, is I want to give you a place that you can go and you can find things after today. And then also be able to, if time permitting, to talk a little bit about how licensing information works. That's a question that I get a lot. To start out though, licensing doesn't really matter so much if you're not publishing your materials. You can use things in an educational context in your classroom, and there's generally, under fair use, there's really not any issue, okay? But if you want to share back your work, which I hope you will, you make an awesome activity, you customize an awesome activity, that's more where the licensing information comes into play. Does that make sense, everybody? So we won't worry about that too much yet. And to get started, let's talk a little bit about what OER are to be all on the same page. But I want to hear from you. What types of curricular materials do you use in your class? So I put together, I don't know if anyone's used Mentimeter before. Has anyone used Mentimeter before? This is just a great free polling website that you can use. So if you go to this link, you can just type in and it's going to make a word cloud. And I love using word clouds in my class. If you haven't seen a word cloud before, what it does is it'll make the things that are most prominent or most shared amongst the group appear the biggest, and things that aren't as commonly shared appear smaller. So I'll let you type in some responses and then we'll see that come to life. Oh, and I haven't shared my screens with you all. Let me see. Sorry about that. There you go. Now you can see what I see. I'm sorry, I have pretty slides. You'll get these afterwards. Sorry about that. I love watching the word cloud kind of take picture, unfold. Super fun. So newspapers, infographics, PowerPoints, textbooks, grammar sheets, magazines, most of these, I would say, there are openly licensed materials for. Yeah, you can submit more than one answer. Go ahead. So I'll take a screenshot of this afterwards and put it in our slides so you can go back and see the responses. If you have more, go ahead and you can keep adding them in there. But what I want you to really walk away from today is knowing that OER are more than textbooks. When most of you first heard of OER, did you hear of it as being like a textbook? I know that was like my first introduction, was that it was like, oh, OER are free textbooks that you can use. And so that's something that I really want to help people understand, is that an OER can be a textbook, but there's lots of different things that make up a textbook, or things that can be standalone that you can use in your classes. So these are a few different types of ancillary materials that you might use in your classroom. Many of you mentioned using things like videos or photos or infographics, worksheets, I think would count as an activity or simulation, slide decks, assessments. How many of you do some sort of informal or formal assessment with your students? Yeah. And then authentic materials. Does everyone know what I mean by that? We'll talk a little bit about that in when we get to this slide, but the idea of authentic materials are they're for native speakers by native speakers, right? So they're for native speakers of English by native speakers of English. They were never intended for educational use, but that doesn't mean they can't be used for educational purposes, right? So to kick things off, I thought it would be really helpful to talk to you about 6 of the benefits of using OER. So you go back to a colleague or a student or administrator, and they're like, why should I consider this OER thing? You have a little bit of food for thought. By the way, I will share at the end with you the slides for today, and I have all my speaker notes in there that has this information. So if you're like me, where you're like, oh, screenshotting furiously or jotting down things, I will share everything with you. So you have peace of mind where you can just listen if you want to. But yeah, cost savings, right? This is a real thing. The average college textbook costs about $105, and the textbook industry is valued at $2.5 billion, okay? There's a lot of money being made there at the cost of our students. And, it's not just physical books, right? There's a lot of online tools. I don't know if there's any like for ESL, but I know like for math, for example, a lot of the websites are really costly. Sometimes they cost about like on average about $78 per semester, and you lose access at the end of the semester. You don't really get to keep anything. So with OER, what I like is that it's free and you get to hang on to it forever. It doesn't expire. In terms of social justice, we could do a whole webinar on this topic. But to me, it's really helping to make sure that we're bringing in diverse perspectives. Marginalized groups are able to share their viewpoints. It can be anything from Indigenous people to making sure that women are better represented in science curriculum. There's so many different things that go with that. But just really recognizing that diverse experience are legitimate and that we don't all go through the same journey to learn English, for example, right? And that is awesome. And we should celebrate that. We all come from different backgrounds. And I think that our students really appreciate when they can see themselves more in the material. And then it's also really making sure that we're bringing in diverse viewpoints too. So I think that's something that's really tricky with a lot of publisher material is that sometimes we miss out on experiences from learners of color or women's experiences or hearing from all different types of groups, right, about their own particular experiences and not putting words in their mouth, right, actually hearing from their voices. There's a lot of creativity and autonomy when it comes to open educational resources. So one of the things that open educational resources or OER empower you to do is to be able to actually curate and customize the materials. So you can take what you want and leave what you don't, and you can make changes to it. In order to be considered a true openly licensed material, it has to give you the ability to make changes to it. And I think that's really exciting, right? Because even when we use publisher content, we are often changing that. We're often customizing that for our students. And OER says, hey, no, you're invited and you really should do this. You really should take a few minutes to customize this, meet the needs of your classroom. A few other things, student success. So students have access to materials from day one. Something that we run into in a lot of disciplines is that with financial aid, sometimes students don't get material or access to their aid for a few weeks in terms of being able to buy a book, and then they're behind. You can have that from day one. And this is something I think that applies to the ESL classroom, right? Too. Your students, they don't have to go to the bookstore, they don't have to go buy a book online. They could have the materials right from the first day. They're up to date because they're not static. OER can always be edited and changed, so you can make it up to date. If there's like a pop culture phenomenon going on, if there's something in the news, you can just pop that into your materials. And I really think that the world of open education is very much into collaboration and encourages collaboration. So this might be something that you work on with colleagues, either at your institution, in the CATESOL group, or across the US. And it might even be something that you work on with your students. So a concept I'll introduce you to, and again, could be a whole nother workshop, is called open pedagogy, if you want to look into this more. But it's the idea that our students don't just need to be consumers of knowledge, but they can also be creators of knowledge alongside us. An example I'll give you is I teach a class for our world language majors where they get ready for life after graduation. And we have an assignment where they get to explore different careers for language majors. They do a informational interview or they go out and they research a different career field. And then rather than that, just keeping that information to ourselves, we put it into an openly licensed book that any student who is a language major could go in and look at and say, hey, what can I do with a language major? So there's all kinds of things, but I've seen anything from like creating a brochure about your community to creating a book for like international students that are coming to visit or stay at in your city, all kinds of different stuff. Okay, so that was a lot. But I hope that you could think of one or two benefits that you could share with a colleague, a student, or an administrator. And why don't we do it in a sort of a fun way? Why don't we add it to a Padlet? Has anyone used Padlet before? Yeah, Padlet's it's like a digital bulletin board. And this is the new Padlet sandbox feature, which if you ever used Jamboard before, anybody a Jamboard user from before? Yeah, this is kind of a nice replacement to Jamboard. I know, I'm so sad. I love Jamboard. But this is kind of similar. So you can go in, there's sticky notes here down at the bottom, or there's just text you can choose. And then you click on there and then you can add your note. And I think I have to like refresh if I remember correctly to get this to pop up. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, click on the sticky note down here or on the right-hand side.
Where are we seeing this? I'm not seeing this. I mean, I see you're on your screen, but where am I supposed to? Do I just click on your screen over here?
You see
Wait.
the sticky? I put the link in chat for you.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I missed
That's
that.
okay. Yeah, click on link in chat, and then on the right-hand side, you can click on the sticky note, choose a color, and then you just click where you want it to show up.
Okay. Oh, so this is like Jamboard. This is
Yep.
Padlet?
Yeah, this is Palette. This is their new sandbox tool.
Oh, okay. Oops.
So I see flexibility, creativity, personalized, free, up-to-date resources for your students, variety.
How do you type in it? I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Which one did you choose? Did you choose the sticky one?
The purple box right here.
Ah, okay. I think what you're gonna want to do is just click the T over here on the right-hand side and then click on top of the box.
Oh, I see. Okay. Text box.
Yep, there
Oh,
you go.
let me see.
You can also just double click on the post-it.
Oh, you can?
Oh, it does
Ah,
work
there
on the
you go.
shapes too.
Okay.
Okay, cool. I didn't know it worked on the shapes. Awesome.
Somebody already said this. I know.
That's okay. No, it's good. Repetition is good. Keeping all your resources, staying up to date, have students create materials, social justice. Awesome. And I will go back and take a screenshot. So if you want to finish your idea, go ahead and do that. And I'll go back and take a screenshot and put it in the slides for us too. Okay, so now that you've heard a little bit about what OER are, we are kind of all on the same page with that and some of the benefits. Now I want to dive into some different examples from those different categories that I showed you before. So again, we have like presentations, multimedia, activities, those kinds of things. So I have for you an example from each category. And I also have a handout, which I'll put in the chat again for you. And this has an example from each, it's a one pager, but it has an example from all 5 categories for you. And then again, I'm going to show you how to find these types of things, because I think that's the most important. Like I could give you 10 awesome websites, but isn't it better if I give you some awesome ways to find them too, right? So, yeah, but let's dive in. So the first one I want to show you is this idea of presentations. I'm kind of using that term loosely. So when we think of presentations, those might be slide decks that are aligned to like our textbook or our course curriculum, but they might also be standalone content. There might be something that you use in class to deliver an activity, but they can also be homework that you assign to students as well. The one that I want to show you today is called Storyweaver. Has anyone heard of this website before? Yay! Well, look at that. Storyweaver is openly licensed, and it allows not only for students to go in and be able to read different books, but I think that's something that's super cool about this site is it allows students to create books. And I think that's a great interpretive activity for them to go in and read, but then it could be a great presentational activity, right, for them to go in and write something. So you can go in here, you can create a free account, but you'll see here that there's read and there's different languages, different levels. Something though that I also like is that there's a way to view by different topics as well. So climate change, health and hygiene, animals and birds, right? So depending on the age group that you're working on or the thematic topics that you guys are exploring, there's all kinds of different stuff. So let's just go to the climate change, for example, right? You can go in here and there's all sorts of different books, but then under create, you can actually remix any of these books. So they could go in and even if they found a book, like if students were Spanish speakers as for their first language, they could go in and they could find a book and change that, use the text to create a book in English if they wanted to. They can also use, like there's tons of great images in the Storyweaver library about all kinds of different things, so they can make their own original story. You could even like use some of these as icebreakers or warm-ups in class and have them like, hey, like with a partner, describe what you see in the scene, or like, what do you think is going to happen after the scene, or like kind of like predictive, I forget what that's called, like information gap activities, right? all kinds of different creative ways that you could use this, but this is one of my favorite presentation tools. There are all kinds of other things out there though too. So if we go to the handout, this is a really cool openly licensed book. It's called Alma Strikes a Chord. Has anyone seen this one? It's a short novel for low intermediate students of English. So I'm using the term presentation loosely, right? But it's not a textbook, right? It's a novel. But it's openly licensed, so you can take it, you could adapt it for your students. And I think it's really fun because it uses fun and quirky characters from Portland, Oregon, which is really not that far from California, depending on where you're at, right? So that could be really fun. And then the other one I'll point out to you that's on this handout is called In the Event of Moon Disaster. And what this is basically is when the moon landing took place, President Nixon had to write two speeches, right? He had to write one for if they were successful landing on the moon, and one for if they did not land on the moon successfully, if there was a crash or something like that. And what happened is they MIT actually made what's called a deep fake, where they made a video of President Nixon delivering that alternate speech, the speech that was never delivered. And it is an excellent example, excuse me, of disinformation. And there's all kinds of media literacy activities tied into that. So I thought this was a great ESL one too, because no matter if you're teaching English or if you're like me and you're working with foreign languages or world languages, this is something that we're all dealing with, right? This idea of disinformation or misinformation. So it could be really, really cool. Okay, so yeah, we'll go to the next one. But I'm glad you all heard of Storyweaver, or most of you had heard of Storyweaver before, because
I've heard of Storyweaver, but I was totally lost when you were talking about it because I've only heard of it. I don't know how you use it or what it is. I was going to tell you that, but that's okay. You can continue with the presentation.
Yeah. Okay, so the next one that I want to show you is a multimedia example. This website is called American English Sounds. Has anyone seen this one before? Okay, so again, it's I don't think I actually have this one on the handout, so I'll put this one in chat for you so you can pull up the website if you want. But what this is a completely openly licensed website that has all sorts of different practice for students. I think this would be a great tool to use for homework if you wanted to, because each page is divided up into 5 sections. So students first listen and hear the sound. And then there's they learn how to pronounce and spell the sound, and some other stuff that has to do with grammatical units. They get opportunities to compare, but then it's really nice examples of application here. So it's not just passive, like, oh, I'm hearing the sound. They're getting the opportunity to use it in words and sentences, and then also in like a natural communication task. So you can go in here, you can look at all kinds of different things. I don't know, we'll just click on this one here. And you can see here, so there's listen.
Ear.
You can even download the file here if you want to. All kinds of information on how to make the sound. Practice with the sound. And then opportunities to use the sound. And again, these could be great homework or in-class activities as well. So I love this website. And yeah, it's completely openly licensed. So lots of cool stuff that you could do with it if you want to take what you need from it. And then on the handout, let's see, do I have anything else on here? Yeah, I've got a couple different things for you. This website, Openverse, has anyone heard of that one before? Okay. So Openverse is a search engine for openly licensed photos, images, and audio that you can use pretty much however you want. So if we're looking for a photo of a dog, we can come in here and I can just choose images, and there are all kinds of adorable pictures of dogs that we could use. There are also audio files though too here, which could be really helpful because they're mostly in English, right? Some of these are like sound effects, but there might be other things where you want to type in a word and get a sound bite of the word. And you can download any of these. These could also be fun for students if they're doing a storytelling activity, right? Where maybe they could use this website to find photos and then also add audio sound effects. Really easy to do with this tool. And then I wanted to give you another resource for multimedia. Sharon, you might have seen this one before, so sorry. But it's free and inclusive design resources. So this is a treasure trove, and I'm going to be updating it soon too. So bookmark it because I've got a few more sites to add. But there are all kinds of photos, but also illustration sites that you can use that are openly licensed, and they tell you how to provide an attribution as well here at the bottom. So you want to, it's good to model giving credit even if we're not publishing, right? So there's information on how to provide an attribution on here. But again, when we're talking about making sure that we are showing diverse perspectives, it's not just physical appearance, right? Sometimes it's the food our students eat, right? So there's ways that you can go in and you can find all kinds of different food or living arrangements or age, right? Our students might be all different age groups. There's so many ways to bring that in. And so these are all free and openly licensed sites that you can use. And like I said, I keep it bookmarked because I'm going to update it with a few more sites that I've got. I think that was everything for the multimedia. Yeah.
Which one was that one? I'm sorry, what was that one called?
Oh, that is it's on your handout.
Right. What was the name of it?
It's the underneath multimedia. It's free and inclusive design resource presentation.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yep.
And also I just wanted to say I am planning on publishing. I'm going to publish a either zero cost or low cost textbook for my level of ESL at my college. And so I'll need to will it be difficult for me to get the licensing, or is it just giving credit or
Yeah, so it depends on the resource. We'll talk about that too, time permitting, on how to do that.
Okay.
If not, I'd be happy to come back and talk about that for people who are interested on licensing.
Okay.
But because it's for non-commercial use, everything that I'm sharing with you today, you're good. We're checking the box there, right? For commercial use, it's like a little bit different. But it kind of depends on the resource. So we'll get there. I'll show you how. Okay, so and then the next one I want to show you are assessments. So many of you mentioned that you use either informal or formal assessments. But I thought it would be helpful to show you, sorry again, Sharon, but this is great that you're here so you can see. But I wanted to share with you the Franze Inclusive book, and I will put a link to it in chat for you. There's 4 levels, French 101 through French 202. And you might go, Amber, why are you showing me French materials? Well, that's a beautiful thing about openly licensed materials, right? Is I can take these ideas and I can make them my own. So if you go into the French book and go to where it says evaluation, we have over 16 different assessments across the 4 books, and they each are comprised of 3 parts. We do what's called an integrated performance assessment. So it looks at, not only does it look at like presentational writing or presentational speaking, but it also looks at interpretive skills, so reading and listening, and then also interpersonal. So we're really looking at all 4 modes. And so you can go in here and you can see there's an activity. The instructions are all in English. And there's also a rubric as well that's in English that you could use too. Now, we only have the presentational part in the book because we wanted the other 2 pieces to be more spontaneous so that students couldn't like practice it ahead of time. So the other thing I'll show you is at the very beginning of the book, if you go to introduction, we have a form that you can fill out. Takes just a minute, and we will grant you access to our Google Drive that has all of the assessments in an editable format for you with the rubrics. And so it's not open just to French teachers. You can see here, if you don't teach French, what languages or levels do you teach? That's all we want to know. But there's also slide decks with lots of different activities. Sharon, Madeline, and Brittany put together some awesome cultural reflections as well. These could totally be adapted for ESL purposes as well. So something else to think about. Language teaching materials, there are, yeah, they're sharing the credit, yay. There are lots and lots of great language teaching materials that are openly licensed that you might find work for your context, depending on what you're doing. That one's not on the handout, Carol, but it is in the slide deck, and I can put it in the chat again. It's the
I
book.
see it. I'm sorry, I forgot you put it in.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
Chad, yeah, go ahead.
Thanks for sharing this. Can I ask, was there any grant funding for making this? This is a really beautiful book, and how long did it take to make it?
Great question. So we did receive some funding. We received some funding from the concurrent enrollment program. So some of the actual high school teachers who are doing concurrent enrollment are using this book in their class. And then we also received some funding from our Center for Teaching and Learning to create it. We also were creative and scrappy, but it took some time. It took about a semester for each book, and the thing about OER is that we're still always refining, right? So we're still always finding things that we want to change and update, but we did receive some funding. And I absolutely recommend advocating for funding whenever you can. It's not always possible. But a good tagline that, I once heard from someone say is that OER is free to use, but it isn't free to create. And we do really need to recognize the labor that's tied to that. Yeah, does that answer your question, Chad?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big believer in this. I just also know what it takes the effort that it takes, the sweat equity, and I was just curious. Are there also plans for an update? Like, I'm curious to know if you have. I mean, it's only so old, but I'm just thinking ahead. Like, do you have a long-term plan to keep it updated?
Yeah, so these books are actively being used with the courses at Boise State right now. So they're still being updated as we find mistakes or better materials or things like that. We applied for a grant and didn't get it within our college. So we're looking for other kind of external funding opportunities because we have lots of great ideas. That's a problem. We have lots of great ideas, but it does take some funding to get some of that done. Good question. Okay, back here. All right, and activities and simulations. So I kind of use this term loosely because it could be anything from an interactive lab to practice activities that are things like a worksheet, right? And I'm sure that's probably more like what you all are familiar with. Some of these tools can be things that like you print out and you use in your classroom. Some of them can be auto-graded where they're just like practice activities, like the pronunciation one that I just shared with you. I don't think I have it open anymore, but those are auto-graded, right? So students can do those activities as many times as they want and get feedback. Or some of them, have to be instructor graded. But speaking of media literacy, I wanted to share this great activity that I found. And it's by Emily Moore. She is out of Grossmont. Oh, I'm going to get it wrong. It's Grossmont,
Cuyamaca.
Cuyamaca, thank you. I even looked up how to say it. Grossmont Cuyamaca. And she has tons of stuff. So Emily Moore is someone you might want to check out. I don't know if we have to see if she's part of the catesolmw group because she's doing some really cool stuff. But let me go ahead and pop it open for you. I'll put this one in chat too. But this is one of the activities that she created all on media literacy, and there is so much stuff in here. So there's the whole unit. And she talks about the topics and the skills, the writing assignment. I mean, I was blown away. These are all openly licensed, so you can make changes to them, use them how you want. We'll talk about this, but you just have to give Emily credit, and you need to use the same license, which we can talk about. But there's slide decks in here. So activities on what is media literacy. Some of these you might have to request access for her, but that shouldn't be a problem. And there's a media bias worksheet. There's a writing assignment. I mean, so much. Well, I was like, I mean, this is just one example of the things that she's put together. So I would really recommend checking out her resources. If you just type in Emily Moore and then you type in her institution where she's at and ESL, you should get them to come up, but I'll give you another resource where a lot of them are at. But lots and lots of handouts and worksheets. And then I think on the
Sorry,
handout,
question real quick.
oh
You
yeah,
said her
sure,
name was
Carol.
Emily Moore, Moore?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, thanks.
I also put another example on the handout for you. This is a whole 4-module section on a career exploration for ESL students. So yeah, like I said, I do a lot of stuff with career exploration, and I thought that this was really cool because these materials are specifically for low-level ESL students. And this is a Canvas module. So if any of you use Canvas, you can actually just like, if you log in, you can import the materials right into your Canvas Commons. So lots and lots of cool stuff there that might be of interest. And then the last one I'm going to share with you is authentic materials, right? So again, if you're not familiar with that term, it's the idea that it's language or materials created by and for native speakers. And they're really beneficial because it's authentic. It's the way people really use the language, right? Not just the way we use the language in the classroom. And they also introduce students to culture. They're great for reading and listening comprehension. And so I created this infographic, if you will, that might be of interest to you. It's for world languages, but I think it really would apply for ESL as well, because it will give you different ideas of different authentic materials that you can use in your classroom, right? You can come in here and you can see like, oh, receipts. I had never thought about using receipts in my classroom. That may be a great tool to use. Or schedules. Oh, I never thought about using a train schedule or movie show times or things like that, right? So depending on how familiar you are with the idea of authentic materials, this can be really helpful just to kind of get your creative juices flowing. But there are lots and lots of authentic materials that are openly licensed, right? So one of the ones that we might use the most, Wikipedia. How many of you have used Wikipedia? Yeah. Wikipedia is openly licensed. So if you go to the very bottom of the page, you'll see here, it has a Creative Commons license on here. Again, I'll talk about those licenses here in a moment. But we can go in here and we can take news articles from Wikipedia and we can make them shorter. We can change them. So this would be a whole nother workshop, right? But how many of you are kind of playing with open AI and ChatGPT and those kind of generative AI tools, right? I could take an article from Wikipedia and I could say, hey, do this to it, change it this way, simplify it, take out this stuff, use these types of tenses, right? Put some of this vocabulary in here. And I have permission to do that because of the license that Wikipedia has, right? So that's a fun idea. You could use this to find great pictures as well. A lot of the pictures on here are openly licensed too. Yeah, just planting your seed for you. You're going to be surprised that a lot of the stuff that you use on a daily basis has a Creative Commons license on it, and you can transform it for your own purposes. And that book that I shared with you too, this Authentic Materials, this is a book that I created that actually goes through the 5 R's of OER and how we might find something, how we might customize it to use for our own classroom, how we might share it back. And specifically, this is sharing back with Pathways, but we accept TESOL activities. It's a language activity repository, right? So we accept those. But these might be helpful resources to you as well as you explore OER, see what's possible. Okay, that was a lot of information. I am going to pause for a second to see if there are any questions so far, and then I want to show you how to find these resources. And I think we should probably save the licensing. I'll share these so you'll have the licensing stuff in there, but maybe could share that for another time because I'd rather spend time answering questions. So yeah, let's take any questions that you have so far. Yeah, Sharon.
So on that infographic for the authentic resources, are most of those in non-English languages or are some of them in English too?
Some of them are in English. I would say most of them are in other languages on purpose, but I think you can find, especially like I use Flickr for a lot of those, and you could use that to find things in English. You probably would get more than I got because I was looking in specific languages.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Real quick, this is kind of not the point, but just out of curiosity, for that website that you just showed for the authentic materials slash your French textbook, what website slash like what tool are you using to build that?
That tool is called Pressbooks. And
Okay.
We have a license through the state of Idaho. So I know that California has a license. I think there might be a state license, but I know like there's lots of content coming out of California. So I'm sure that you all would have access to it. LibreText is another one where you could publish materials through. And then the other one that is really good that you could check out is called PubPub. It looks really nice.
PubPub?
Yeah, it's pub.org.
Oh, okay, PubPub.
And this is it's a free site that you can use to make all kinds of cool art. Like you can make like articles that link to different pages. So you can do a lot of the same stuff that you can do with Pressbooks. But yeah, Pressbooks is really cool. I love it.
Yeah, it looks really cool.
If you want to know more about that too, I don't know if you find out that a lot of people have licenses, I'd be happy to talk about that too, because it's
yeah, I mean, I don't want to, if other people have questions, that's more important, but the whole idea of digital organization and like, how do you do that is something that like, I'm really interested in. But anyway, yes, questions.
Other questions, or do you want me to show you where you can find these resources? Want to jump into that? Okay, great. Okay, so this slide has a bunch of different places that you can go. Some of them you might be familiar with, some of them you might not have seen before. So let's just do a quick poll. How many of you have heard of OER Commons? Merlot? A newer one? Okay. OER for ESL. Okay. LibreText? And then how about the OERI for the California Community Colleges? Anyone seen this one before? Okay. So I think I'm gonna skip these two and show you these. But they're all kind of similar in terms of the concept. And then I'll show you this one too. And then I have a couple of search tips for you that'll help you to find materials. So this first website is really cool. It's a Google site, so it's not super fancy, but there are a ton of resources on here that I think that you all would find beneficial. So there's anything from textbooks to readers and novels, writing and grammar, listening and speaking. And then Oregon actually puts out a weekly newsletter as well for ESL. So that might be of interest. And they have this website here with there's lots of news stories too that you can follow. So like I think it's kind of like an online blog. But yeah, like this looks so fun. Portland People and Places, easy short stories about what keeps Portland weird and wonderful. Like, I don't know, this could be really fun. Easy short stories about common daily activities. Here's the Alma Strikes a Chord one that I showed you earlier. So lots of great stuff. And because these are all revisable, right? If you wanted to change it to a Boise specific context or San Francisco specific context, right? You can do that. You're empowered to do that. The other one is called LibreText, and this one is really powerful. There are so many resources on here, but yeah, you can see here there's 16 domain-specific libraries with over 4,000 OER textbooks. But a tip that I have on here for you is to remember, any textbook that is openly licensed means that you can dissect it, for lack of better words. If you find a great activity, if you find a great worksheet, a great quiz, videos, photos, whatever, you can take all of those things, okay? And use those in your own book. Again, licensing, we'll have to say for another time, but just know that generally you can do that. And then if I come up here to the top of the LibreText website and click on ESL, or type in ESL, excuse me, you'll see here that there are a ton of resources here. So there are books And the books you can think of too is sort of like a curation or a collection. That's sort of the term that they use. You can also go on here and click on assets, and there's individual items. There's projects as well. But the books are probably your best place to start because I think a lot of the assets are in the books. That's what makes up the books. So you can come in here and you could look at this one. So let's look at the ESL worksheets, for example, here. Okay, so I can come here and then it looks like there's all sorts of different verb tenses, all kinds of different exercises. And if I click on them,
I have a question. If you want to create a textbook, which is what I'm planning on doing, can you do that? Does the LibreText platform have a place for that, like some kind of a template or something that you could use?
I don't know that they have like a specific template for each discipline, but they have a space. So within each discipline, you can go in and you can create things. There's also things for different institutions too. So you might check to see if the institution that you're at has its own book, like bookshelf, I think is what it's called. I haven't really made things in LibreText before. So I'm not as familiar with it, but there's definitely ways to create materials in here. And there's also ways to revise things as well, as far as I understand.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then this is the other one that I wanted to show you. So this one's from the Open Educational Resources Initiative for California community colleges. But there are a ton of different resources on here. And that's where I was able to find some of the content from Emily Moore is on here. I'm trying to remember where specifically. Yeah, here, and here's some of the there's even some LibreText on here. I don't know if it listed it on the actual title, so you might have to, oh yeah, here's one here. So like the career explorations one here. So there's a nice description of the level, the skills, and then a bit about what the students would do in the modules or the activities. This is a really great resource. It would be so fun though if the group were up to it to like make a spreadsheet or make a Google Doc and we could just dump all of the stuff that we have and kind of then curate it somehow afterwards. But that's food for thought for the future too. Because one thing I know Carol, like what you're talking about is like you feel really overwhelmed. There's lots of stuff everywhere. So that's something that like I've done with language materials is like, let me find a way to organize these all in one place. So that might be a fun project. We've got a couple minutes left. So before I'll hang around after time for questions, but before we finish, I wanted to share, there's a couple of suggestions that I have for you when you want to go out and find these materials. Okay, so I would really recommend avoiding the term ancillary materials. Even though I use that with you a ton today, if you type in ESL ancillary materials, you probably won't find that much, to be honest. It's the same thing if I type in French or Spanish or whichever language, people don't really use that term. So go back to those different types that I told you about, right? So assessment, presentation, multimedia, activities, use those words and you're gonna find you have better results. Include openly licensed or OER in your search, unless you're using a website like OER Commons or Merlot or LibreText. These are already like, Merlot isn't all openly licensed, but OER Commons and LibreText, they're already openly licensed. So people aren't probably going to put that in the description, right? And then if you find a material that you like, so try looking for the same author or institution. So Emily Moore, right? We talked about her. I bet you if I go in and I type in her name into Google, there might be stuff that like isn't even in these websites that she has published out there. Don't be afraid. People in the open community are really friendly and kind too. If you can get Emily's email address, hey Emily, I love the content that you're using. Do you have a website? Do you have somewhere where I can find your materials, right? And she might be like, here's my shared Google Drive. There you go. Something like that. So people, don't be afraid of that. People are like, this is, again, there's not competition. People genuinely, really want to share their materials. Okay. So we are right at time. I've got lots of great information about licensing and stuff, so I'd be happy to come back and do that. But let me do this for you. here is my email address. This is my Boise State email. And then this is my LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with me on there. And then I want to make sure that I get you all of the materials from today. Natasha or Ursula, can you put those in chat again for everybody?
Yes.
Awesome.
We
And
can
then
also send out an email when you registered for the event. We should have gotten your contact details, so we can send up a follow-up. We can send a follow-up email with all of the links. And just feel free to email us back if you have any questions.
yeah.
That
So
would
with
be
that, I want to
great.
respect
That would-
everybody's time. So if you have to go, that is totally fine. But otherwise, I'd be happy to stick around with any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Chad, did you have I saw your hand raised. Did you have a
Oh,
question?
sure. I'm just going to put this in the chat, but I just wanted to offer folks, if they have a librarian to work with them at their site, I'm going to put the City College OER website so that people can look, and librarians are good at kind of collecting and putting things
Librarians
into
are
shape.
really great to
So,
help with
willing to help.
attributions too. So I can't say more about using a librarian if you're not sure about those things. But I feel bad like I didn't get to that part, but I've got lots of content on that too.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And yeah, Amber, I'm really excited because yeah, we have a lot to talk about. We have a lot that we are excited to hear more from you about for sure. Natasha knows I've created a couple curated lists. I love doing that.
Yay.
So yeah, whether it's, with everybody else in the group or one-on-one or whatever, I'm always happy to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, everyone. Did anybody have any last questions or anything for Amber? Okay.
If you're looking for any updates regarding workshops that we hold as a part of the Material Writers Interest Group of CATESOL, you can always check out the main website. I have a bajillion tabs open up, but here, I'll send it in the chat. And we'll also include it in the follow-up email. There are also a bunch of other interest groups available, like if you're interested in like pronunciation. We have an LGBTQ focused interest group. Feel free to explore the website. Email us if you have any questions about anything related to CATESOL. That's okay too. And yeah, anything else, feel free to keep in touch.
The conference is in November.
Right. We have
Yes.
we have an annual conference happening. It's going to be in Southern California this time from November 14th to the 16th. One day it's going to be online only, but there will be an in-person day as well. So that's also on the website if you want to check it out. Next year it'll probably be Northern California. It kind of switches off. But if that's something you're interested in, yeah.
Natasha, do you have to be in California to join your group?
No, great question. You don't have to.
Okay. Thank you.
If you're interested in becoming a member, because I know if you're not a member of CATESOL, you paid $5 to attend this workshop. And if you want to attend other workshops, it's also at $5, I believe. But if you become a member, it's $30 per year. You can attend any workshop that you want for free.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good value there. That's pretty cool.
And if you ever, one more thing, if you ever have any things you want to talk about or anybody that you know who you would love to see do something similar, please email us as well, like I said, or if there's any topics that you know, like specifically, it sounds like a few of you, like OER is very specific to what you're doing. We always want to hear from you. We want to make sure that whatever we're offering is of value. So we are here for you.
Yeah,
All right.
a lot of people requested OERs at our last annual conference. So I did some LinkedIn research and found Amber. She's amazing. Who would have thought? And so I got really lucky there, but let us know and I can do more research.
Yes.
So thank you, Amber.
Right.
Thank you for today.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yes,
It was
thank
so
you
good to
so
meet all of
much.
you. Please feel free to reach out if you have further questions, and hopefully we can do something again. And yes, and plug for your librarians because they are awesome. Please reach out to them. They will do great work to help you and partner with you.